If you want to communicate clearly and confidently, you are at the right place. By the end of this video, I'll give you my unfailing tips on how to communicate in a clear, crisp, and confident manner. For the best of branding, communication, and personal growth advice, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to be notified whenever I post a video every Tuesday and Friday. I have been a communications professional throughout my academic and professional life, and I still do a lot of work in this area. And most importantly, I understand what it takes to communicate clearly and confidently, and I am here to share that with you. The first point is very important and may seem like a very common point, but I am here to emphasize: read, read, read. The more you read, the more you're able to have so many different ideas. It gives you confidence, it gives you an ability to improve yourself, it gives you an ability to think outside the box, it gives you an ability to stay informed and be able to contribute to conversations. So when you read, you have more to say, and when you read, you not only have just more to say, you have a lot of important points to make that would stimulate people's thoughts, would make people appreciate your points that you're saying. So it also means that you're going to be speaking from an informed position, so you know what you're talking about. While I advise you to read, I also encourage you to be careful or be selective with the kind of things that you read. You want things that would inspire you, want things that would inform you and also entertain you, of course, but it's important that you read widely. It helps to stimulate your brain, it helps you contribute to discourse, it helps you contribute to conversations, and you never know where you will be and what kind of conversation would come up. Imagine that person who always seems informed when there's a conversation. You have the facts, you have an idea at least, and that in itself puts you at a certain pedestal. It just makes you confident when you're communicating. I know that a lot of people do not read a lot these days, but there's a lot of information out there. Information is practically free. You can get so much information out there. So please read, read, and read. Have a clear message. So you want to avoid long-windedness. You want to avoid beating about the bush. So whatever you want to say, you need to have a clear message. Be straight to the point and don't go all round before you get to your point. And what you can also do is that you have to be able to say it to yourself before you speak it out loud. So but you need to have a clear message if you want to communicate clearly, and bear in mind the key word is clearly. So you have to have a clear message. Ever wondered why some people speak so much but you don't really get what they are trying to communicate? Which is because they do not have a clear message, or they have a clear message but they are just not communicating it clearly. So make sure you avoid long-windedness, avoid beating about the bush. Be able, especially in your first and last sentences, make sure that you reiterate in one clear sentence the message that you are putting across. That is very important. Organize your thoughts. Before you say anything, you need to think about it in your head. You need to be able to organize it and know that, okay, I would want to say this first, I want to say this second, I want to say this third. And I'm saying this first because it is going to set a pace or introduce a subject. I'm saying this second because it will reinforce the first point. And I'm saying this last because it summarizes everything that I'm going to say. So you need to organize your thoughts. You can write them on a sheet of paper, you can write them on your phone, on your iPad, you can write them depending on where the conversation is going on and whether it's a presentation or just a casual conversation. Even if it's a casual conversation and you feel like you want to remember, you can write it down, as long as you don't like do this as if you're reading a script. I mean, that would be fine, but just to remind yourself of the sequence of the conversation or what you want to say at what particular point in time. So please do make sure that you organize your thoughts, because sometimes if you do not organize your thoughts, it comes across as if you do not know what you're saying. When you actually do know what you're saying, you're probably just not putting it in the right sequence or in the right way that would get people to appreciate. Because just sometimes people may not necessarily know where you're coming from, they don't really get the point or don't know the argument, so you need to put it in a particular order for them to appreciate it and get and understand what you're saying. I sometimes have a trick. What happens sometimes if you don't know how to organize it in your head, you can use this whole thing about putting it in alphabetical order, especially if whatever you're saying is supposed to be in a sequence. You can try and put it in alphabetical order, or whichever way works for you, or whatever helps you remember, so you can be able to organize it in your head before you speak them out. And in that way it crystallizes whatever you're saying and makes you sound very confident and clearly communicates whatever you want to say with people understanding you. Give an example, scenario, or tell a story. So what makes a conversation interesting is sometimes when people can remember. Mostly people are able to remember stories, they're able to remember scenarios, they're able to remember examples. So as you talk, make sure that you give people examples of whatever you're saying. That does not only reinforce what you're saying, it also gives them something to think about and remember. One thing that's very important in a conversation is the ability of people to remember what you're saying and to be able to make it memorable. So to keep it crisp, tell a story. People remember stories, and people are more interested in stories. So the more you tell someone a story, the more they are likely to listen and pay attention, and the more they are also likely to ask a question afterwards. And to say that you want to communicate clearly and confidently does not mean you should be boring in your communication. And so telling a story or giving a scenario or just giving examples of what you're saying helps people contribute to the conversation. It helps them follow you, and it helps to make people relate to what you're saying. You use scenarios, examples, and just stories to get people to follow whatever it is that you're saying. Comment below and let me know which of these points so far you can relate to. And if you haven't checked out my video, if you haven't seen my video on how to stop being shy and communicate confidently, do check it right after this video, and do subscribe also to see more informative videos. Use simple language. I have studied communication and I work in communication, and I have worked in communication, and I am emphasizing that use simple language. Effective communication is communication that has been understood. And if you use language that people do not understand, then your communication really is not effective. So use simple language. You use language that people would understand. Do not use jargons when people are not familiar with those jargons. You can only use jargons when the people around you also understand. Maybe if you're in a scientific conference, or you're speaking to someone in your field, then you use words that they don't understand, that they do understand. But if you're speaking to me and you're using words that are in physics, there's no way I would understand, and that is not you communicating clearly and confidently. So do make sure that you use language that people understand. Make sure you do not use jargons that people do not understand. Use language that people would appreciate and get and grasp. So please use simple language. Do not use language that people do not understand. This is very important because you want your communication to be clear and crisp. And for it to be clear and crisp, it has to be in a language that people understand. Otherwise, it would sound like you're speaking Spanish when you're communicating to someone in English and who doesn't speak Spanish. So it wouldn't make sense. So please use clear, concise, and simple language. Use short, complete sentences. Now, I am not going to deny that I have also had this problem, and I'm working on it currently. And sometimes when I speak, I do not complete my sentences, which is a really bad thing. And so I would encourage you to come with me on this journey. Let us use simple, or let us use complete sentences. So instead of using a long sentence that you do not complete and then you jump onto another sentence, make sure you use short, complete sentences, because what you do is that you communicate that you know what you're talking about. You also get people to understand what you're saying. And sometimes what happens, especially in my case, is that sometimes I'm very excited about what I'm saying, and so I say one thing and I don't complete, and I move on to another idea because I have so many ideas in my head, so I don't complete one and I move on to the other. But I encourage you to use short, complete sentences rather than long, incomplete sentences, because short, complete sentences make you communicate well. It also helps people understand, and it does not leave your ideas hanging, and it does not leave people hoping to hear more of what you started which you did not complete, and it just messes up your conversation if your sentences are not complete. So use short, complete sentences, especially if you are learning to communicate confidently. Then, because what that does is that it helps you speak, so you do not have some kind of pressure to finish something that you started and didn't complete. So please use short, complete sentences. Depending on what you're communicating for, I would advise that you summarize at the end of every point and also communicate impact. Like I said, it depends on what the communication is meant for. So if, for example, it's an official communication or it's a formal communication, or you just met someone and you're having a very formal communication and you're trying to explain something to them or communicate something to them, you have to make sure that if you finish explaining something, you have to summarize it at the end of whatever you say for them to get it in a very crisp manner. And to be more effective, you have to communicate impact. And communicating impact is let them know what it is that you're trying to tell them. So whatever it is that you are telling them, what did it achieve? Make that clear. So it's either you make the impact of your communication very clear, or for example, if you're telling them that you went to a school and studied, say, business administration, and depending on the reason for that communication, you have to let them know what studying business administration has done for you or is doing for you, for them to appreciate the weight of the fact that you studied business administration. So communicate impact, and also make sure that you summarize at the end of whatever that you're saying, because sometimes when you start communicating and you're not careful, by the time you finish saying whatever you're saying, people would have lost you, or you may have started talking about something else or giving some other points that people would miss from the main thing that you're saying. So it's important to summarize at the end. So in the end, so for example, with this point and what I am saying, I'll just summarize at the end, or conclude by saying that it is important to summarize at the end of every point and make sure that you communicate impact. So you see, that last thing I said just summarized all that I had been saying initially. So make sure that you summarize at the end of whatever you're saying for people to get a reminder of the main point and the main argument. And also make sure that you give, to make people really appreciate what you're saying, let them know the impact of that communication. What then happened? What did you achieve? What were the outcomes? And that's very important. Avoid fillers. Fillers make you sound uninformed and unsure of what you're saying. You do not want to sound uninformed or unsure or uncertain of what you're saying. So fillers are examples of fillers could be kind of, sort of, I think, so stuff like that. You have to try as much as possible to avoid them, especially when you say them so many times. It's sort of, no matter how credible you are, people tend to think that you are not sure about what you're saying, or you have no authority over what you're saying. So it's important to avoid fillers as much as you can. And bear in mind, I do understand that sometimes you can do away with them. There are things that are part of our conversations and it will take a while. I'm pretty sure I may have done some of them along the line, but I'm just saying that make sure that you do not keep doing them consistently. Subscribe to my channel, because I will do a whole video on how to avoid fillers and how you can be able to communicate without them. Now that you know the key tips to help you communicate confidently and clearly, how do you project this when communicating to be able to look more confident? I have prepared a 2-page guide on how to be a super confident communicator, and you'll find the link to the guide in the description box below. If you also want to be part of a community of amazing communication professionals, you can join my exclusive group where I share branding and communication tips. Please find the link to that in the description box as well. It's an exclusive Facebook group where we share very important information, so make sure you check that out. Check out these videos on how to improve your communication skills. If you love this video, please make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified whenever I post a video every Tuesday and Friday. Thank you.